As I said before, given that the PlayStation 4 Pro is finally out and is in gamers' hands, there has understandably been a lot of focus on Sony's brand new upgraded console. But of course, a competitor has yet to enter the ring, which is none other than the Xbox One Scorpio. And then we have some comments from Mark Williams, the technical director at Vufu Studios, who developed Mantis Burn Racing. And he was asked about the differences between Sony's and Microsoft's approach when it comes to the whole upgraded console thing. Now, after his comments, we're also going to have some thoughts from Tomonobu Itagaki about his thoughts on the Pro, and he was developer of Devil's Third. But first of all, we're going to be looking at what Mark had to say. Now, he believes that the extra power of the Scorpio will help developers and will undoubtedly mean that far more games on Scorpio will hit true native 4K at 60 frames per second. And he said, quote, "It has generally been more difficult to reach 60 FPS on Xbox One than on PS4. So Scorpio will be a very welcome change. I've yet to see the functional differences in the Scorpio GPU, so it remains to be seen how much of a difference there will actually be, but Scorpio definitely has a significant advantage in terms of memory bandwidth, so we'll definitely be seeing higher fidelity games on there." Now, of course, this is based on what we know about the Scorpio, which at the moment is very little. We do know, yes, it has 60 flops, and we do know about the memory bandwidth, but it's literally it. We don't know what the graphics card is, or the APU, or anything else, the amount of RAM. You know, we can make educated guesses, and there have been rumours, but of course, a lot of it is up in the air. But if the power is good enough, yes, we could see true native 4K at 60 on some games, absolutely. I mean, keep in mind that's pretty difficult to do even on PC. But obviously, there's some extra tricks they might have up their sleeves over at Microsoft. So, you know, it's possible, but of course, let's wait and see until we know what the specs are. However, of course, there is a very valid concern that will this extra horsepower of the Scorpio actually mean anything meaningful, given that Microsoft is saying to developers, yes, you can make this amazing high fidelity, high frame rate game on the Scorpio, but that game also has to run on the Xbox One. And he said, quote, "Yes, definitely. We have to maintain parity from a functional and gameplay point of view, but we can really go to town on ramping up the visual quality. It's like having a PC game where you get a new graphics card and they ramp up all the graphics settings to a maximum. It's the same game, but it looks a hell of a lot nicer." So I suppose, yes, that is a very valid argument. You know, developers are already having to make their games for an infinite amount of PC hardware setups. Basically, you've got high-end versus mid-range versus low-end versus somewhere in between. So they're already making multiple versions, isn't really the right word, but they're already making their game run on multiple systems with the PC. So it's not really that big of an ask to be like, okay, there's Scorpio mode and there's Xbox One mode, and we need to make sure that both versions of those games are running well. But of course, the existence of the Scorpio will mean that we will see superior versions of those same games on the console platform. Now that's it from Mark Williams, but again, we also have some comments from Itagaki, as I said. He was in a recent interview with Polygon, and he was asked about what he thinks the point of the new consoles are. And that full interview with him is really lengthy, so I'm going to link that in the description below. And he talks about how he's not sure about the future of consoles, and that led into some comments about both the Pro and the Scorpio, as well as virtual reality. And he said, quote, "PlayStation 4 Pro is just rhetoric. The current gen doesn't have enough power to support VR, so they're releasing it to support VR. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, aren't I? Microsoft and Sony are going to be on my case for saying shit like this. PS4 Pro is not really their motivation. VR, which is what the upgrade is for, requires a lot of processing power." Now, while that's true, the PlayStation VR is already out and by most accounts runs fine on the vanilla PS4. Undoubtedly, there's going to be extra frames to be gained on the Pro, which in virtual reality is critical, but to say they're releasing it just for VR, I'm not sure I agree, to be honest. Now, do keep in mind that I have not actually played on the PlayStation VR myself. I hopefully will be getting it at some point in the next few months, but based on the reviews and comments from other YouTubers and journalists and so on, it seems to be it runs fine on the vanilla PS4. The frame rate is fine. You know, Sony even said to developers it must run at a solid frame rate of 60, preferably 90, as far as I recall if I recall correctly. So, you know, Sony has already made that a hard line that developers cannot cross. So I don't know if I agree with these comments. I mean, is Pro going to have an impact on VR? Undoubtedly. But, you know, they're still going to have to run on the PS4. So, anyway, let me know your thoughts on everything discussed in this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.